Della, what are you doing in the basement?
Della Hargrove dragged the last cardboard box across the concrete floor of the basement. Dust rose in slow spirals under the single bare bulb. The house in Moxville smelled of old wood and something sharper she couldn't name. She wiped sweat from her forehead and straightened. At the far end, half hidden behind a metal shelving unit heavy with cobwebs, stood a door. What's behind that door is the reason we are here. Everything else in the basement wore a gray coat of neglect. Pipes, boxes, forgotten tools. This door did not. The wood was clean, the deadbolts bright, the padlock new, no handle on this side, just smooth surface and cold metal. Della stepped closer, her fingers left faint prints on the paint. She called up the stairs. Roy appeared at the top, backlit, shoulders filling the doorway. He looked down at her without moving. That room is storage, he said, voice calm and even. Old equipment, nothing interesting. He did not come down, he did not smile, he simply watched. That night Della lay in her new bed listening to the house settle. At 2 a.m. she heard footsteps descend the basement stairs, slow, deliberate. Then the distinct metallic click of a padlock opening. After that, nothing. Only silence that stretched too long. 6 months earlier the divorce papers had arrived on a Tuesday morning like any other. No fight, no warning, no counseling. Roy simply handed Patris the envelope and waited while she read. Custody was split by the court. Weekdays with Roy during the school year. Della had not been asked what she wanted. Roy found the house in Moxville fast, too fast. He signed the papers the same week. When Patris heard the address over the phone she went quiet, then cried without explanation. Della had not understood why. She packed her clothes into black trash bags while Roy loaded the truck. Patris stood on the porch in her bathrobe, arms crossed tight. At the last moment she caught Della's wrist. Della, she said, eyes red but voice steady. Don't go into the basement. Was already in the driver's seat, radio playing low. He heard every word. He did not react. Della climbed into the truck anyway. The drive was quiet except for the hum of tires on asphalt. She watched the familiar streets of home disappear behind her and wondered why her mother's warning felt heavier than the boxes in the back. In Moxville, Roy Hargrove was the man everyone liked. Neighbors brought casseroles the first weekend. Sheriff Blaine Tuck stopped by personally, clapped Roy on the shoulder, called him old buddy like 40 years had not passed. Roy coached Little League on Saturdays, taught the boys to keep their elbows up. Sunday mornings he sat in the same pew at Mount Carmel Baptist, sang the hymns in a steady baritone. He made Della pancakes every weekday morning and asked about her classes every evening. He listened. He remembered the names of her teachers. He was the perfect father. Yet every time Della drifted near the basement stairs, Roy appeared. Without fail, he would step into the hallway, smile, and ask if she needed help with homework. His timing was flawless, almost gentle. On Sunday after church, Ms. Odette Prout, the elderly black woman who had lived next door for 30 years, caught Della's wrist while Roy chatted with the pastor. The man who lived in that house before your daddy, he disappeared too, she whispered, grip surprisingly strong. You remember that. She let go and walked away before Roy turned around. Della sat in third period English at Davie County High and tried to focus on the worksheet. Her mind kept sliding back to the clean door, her mother's warning, Ms. Odette's fingers on her wrist. She was the new girl in a town where everyone had known one another since kindergarten. No one asked her questions beyond where are you from. She gave short answers. During lunch she locked herself in a bathroom stall and called Patris. Her mother answered on the first ring. Della kept her voice low. Mom, why did you tell me not to go in the basement? A long pause, then Patris said, I need you to find something for me before I can explain. In Roy's truck, in the spare tire compartment, a brown envelope. Della closed her eyes. The bell rang. She stayed on the line another second, listening to her mother breathe. Saturday morning Roy left for Little League practice. Della waited until the truck was gone, then walked outside. She lifted the spare tire in the bed, found the brown envelope sealed with her mother's handwriting. Do not open unless something happens to me. Asterisk inside were printed bank records, a hand-drawn map of the property, and one photograph. The woman in the photo was Aunt Cora. Della had seen her only in old albums. Here Cora stood in front of this exact house, smiling faintly at the camera. The date printed on the back was 11 years ago, 3 years after everyone said Cora had run away. On the back in handwriting Della did not recognize. He knows I came here. If I don't call by Friday, tell Patris. Room at the end of the basement, that's where he keeps them. Asterisk. Della's hands shook. She photographed the note with her phone, slid everything back exactly as she had found it, and closed the compartment. That night at dinner Roy watched her differently. He refilled her water glass before it was empty. He asked twice how school had gone. He positioned himself between her and the hallway that led to the basement. His smile never slipped. Della smiled back. She ate every bite. Inside, terror sat cold and heavy in her stomach. She realized Roy was not yet suspicious of her. He was simply always watching, always calculating. After dinner she went to bed and waited until the house was quiet. Then she slid her dresser in front of her bedroom door. At 1 a.m. the footsteps came down the hall. They stopped outside her room. The doorknob turned once slowly. Then the footsteps walked away. Della did not sleep again that night. Della borrowed a cup of sugar, the oldest excuse in the world, and knocked on Ms. Odette's door. The old woman invited her in. She was 74, sharp-eyed, and had lived beside that house since 1991, over 30 years. She said 3 families had moved in. 2 left without saying goodbye. One, a man named Gerald Fitch went on a weekend trip and never came back. His car stayed in the driveway for 2 weeks before anyone noticed. Roy bought the house 8 months later. Ms. Odette's voice carried the weight of years of quiet watching. Before Della left, the old woman pressed a spare key into her palm. That key opens the basement window latch. Gerald Fitch gave it to me and told me the same thing I'm telling you. Keep it somewhere Roy will never look. Della closed her fingers around the key and nodded. Thursday afternoon, Roy had a late practice. Della used the window latch key, slipped into the basement and tried the 4-digit combination from her mother's map. The padlock clicked open. Inside, a filing cabinet, a folding table. A corkboard covered in photographs and names connected by red string. 4 women. Cora was one of them. The others were strangers, their faces printed on missing persons flyers pinned beside the photos. On the table, a shoebox held jewelry, driver's licenses, folded notes. Every license carried a different woman's name. Every note ended with the same word in the same handwriting. Mine, *. Della photographed everything on her phone, heart hammering. She was almost to the door when she saw the 5th corkboard space, empty, with a fresh index card pinned at the top. The name on the card was Patris Hargrove. Della could not run. If Roy suspected, she knew her mother would be next. She had to stay calm, stay in the house, keep acting normal while she figured out who to trust. She could not go to Sheriff Blaine Tuck, Roy's friend for 40 years. She could not call 911 from the house. Roy checked the call logs. During a free period, she emailed the photos to Patris from a school computer, then deleted the sent folder. 2 hours later, her phone rang on a number she did not recognize. The voice was not Patris alone. Della, my name is Detective Yara Foss. I'm with the State Bureau of Investigation. Your mother has been working with me for 4 months. You just gave us what we needed. Something shifted in Roy after Wednesday. Thursday, he came home from practice early, the same day Della had been in the room. He went straight to the basement and stayed 40 minutes. When he came upstairs, he was perfectly calm. He told Della her school had called. She had been marked absent during a free period she had not signed out for. He asked where she went. She said the library. He nodded, made dinner, set her plate down gently. I need you to trust me, Della, he said. This house is safe as long as you stay where you're supposed to be. That night, she found her dresser moved back against the wall. On her pillow lay a single folded note. I know you found the key. * Detective Foss told Della to hold position for 48 more hours. The warrant was being processed. They needed Roy in the house, not spooked and running. Della returned the key at breakfast, said she found it in the yard. Roy accepted it without expression. They ate dinner together both nights. They watched television. Della laughed at the right moments. Roy passed her the remote. It was the most exhausting performance of her life. On the second night, Roy's phone rang at midnight. He took the call in the basement. When he came back upstairs, he told her to pack a bag. Just for the weekend, he said. We're going to visit your uncle in Statesville. Was no uncle in Statesville, they both knew it. The 48 hours had just run out. At 6:15 a.m. before Roy could load the car, 3 unmarked vehicles and 2 Davie County Sheriff's units pulled into the driveway. Detective Yara Foss stepped out of the first one. Roy opened the front door in his bathrobe and went completely still. Not panicked, not angry, just still, like a man who had always known this morning would come. He was handcuffed without resistance. He did not look at Della once as they walked him past her. She stood on the porch in her socks. Detective Foss put a hand on Della's shoulder. We need to search the basement. Then quietly, we're also going to need to dig up the backyard. Looked out at the grass. In 3 places it grew greener, thicker, fed from underneath. Patris arrived within 2 hours and held Della on the porch while investigators worked. They found remains in 2 locations. One was identified through dental records as Cora Lattimore, Patris's sister, Della's aunt, missing 12 years. Patris collapsed in the yard. Della held her mother up. Inside the locked room, investigators cataloged everything. Roy was charged with 4 counts. Sheriff Blaine Tuck was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. In the middle of the night, Della asked Detective Foss the question she had carried since seeing the 5th index card. Was my mother next? Foss was quiet a long moment. The evidence suggests he was planning it for the summer, when you were at your mother's and he had time. Della did not cry. She only nodded and looked at the dark field where they had dug. 8 months later, Roy Hargrove's trial began in Forsyth County. The community of Mocksville sat shattered in the gallery. Little League parents, church members, neighbors who had once brought casseroles. All of them asking the same silent question. How did we not know? The prosecution presented the room, the photographs, the licenses, the buried remains, and the journal found beneath the floorboards. 30 years of entries written long before Della was born. Roy sat at the defense table looking exactly like the man everyone had trusted. That was the most disturbing part. On the 3rd day, the defense called an unexpected witness, a woman who claimed Roy had been with her the night of Cora's disappearance. Della watched from the gallery as the woman took the stand. Then she looked at the woman's hands, her face, and recognized her from one of the photographs in the locked room. She was not an alibi. She was a survivor who had lived under a different name for 11 years. Roy Hargrove was convicted on all 4 counts and sentenced to life without parole. He never spoke to Della again. Patris buried Cora in the spring in a small cemetery outside Lexington near where they grew up. Flowers appeared on the grave every week for the rest of the year. Della went back to live with her mother full-time. She returned to school. Some days she was fine, some days she was not. She was learning both things were allowed to be true. Ms. Odette Prout was interviewed by a documentary crew the following year. She said she had always felt something wrong in that house, but nobody asks old black women what they feel until it is too late. She said it plainly without bitterness. Detective Yara Foss sent Della a letter 6 months after the trial. It read only, "You held when most grown people wouldn't have. Remember that asterisk?" Della folded the letter and placed it in the drawer beside her bed. She did not need it to tell her who she was, she already knew. She had been 16 years old in a dark basement in Mocksville, North Carolina. She had looked at the thing most people spend their lives looking away from, and she had not run. She had not broken. She had stayed present and quiet and sharp until the truth had nowhere left to hide. That is who she is. That is who she will always be. Thank you for joining us. Make sure to drop your comment telling us where you're watching from. Don't forget to watch and subscribe. See you in the next one.